This is the Behind the Line podcast, coming to you from the crazy, chaotic lines of the Pacific Northwest. And this is Pacific Northwest Headline News. Well, here's one of the most pathetic cases you will ever hear, and no surprise that it comes from Seattle. A jury in King County has found a man not guilty on all counts in connection to a shooting in downtown Seattle that killed one person and injured 6 others. The jury of 7 men and 5 women reached their verdicts Thursday after a day of deliberations, finding Marquise Tolbert not guilty of first-degree murder in the death of Tanya Jackson and 6 counts of first-degree assault. Tolbert, 27, was tried separately from his co-defendant William Tolliver, who is scheduled to go on trial on the same charges in November. During Tolbert's trial, his lawyers presented evidence that Tolbert fired in self-defense, and that Seattle police detectives rushed to judgment in deciding Tolbert and Tolliver investigated the gunfight during the evening commute on January 22, 2020. The bullets that hit all of the victims came from Tolliver and Tolbert's guns, but defense lawyer Emily Gauss said video evidence showed someone had gone inside a McDonald's to get rival gang member Jamel Jackson, who aggressively confronted the 2 men and brandished his gun. Gauss said testimony at trial showed the lead detective didn't analyze all the video evidence from that night until June, and it showed Jamel Jackson came out of the McDonald's and initiated the whole thing. Based on the shell casings found at the scene, Tolbert fired 10 rounds, Tolliver fired 9, and Jackson fired at least 5 times while on the crowded sidewalk, according to the attorneys. Tolbert and Tolliver were arrested together in Las Vegas over a week later. Jackson, 24, pleaded guilty to second-degree unlawful possession of a firearm in August 2021 for his role in the incident. Court records show he was sentenced to 16 months in jail, but by that time had already served about 19 months in custody and was released. Wow. Senior Deputy Jennifer Peterson declined to comment on the jury's verdicts. So, because somehow this moron defense attorney convinces the jury that these 2 gang members fired in self-defense, that it's okay that they killed people. It's okay that people were caught in the crossfire. Since when is it okay to defend yourself and accidentally shoot innocent bystanders and nothing happens? No justice. Oops, sorry you got in the way of my gang shootout. I was just trying to defend myself from a situation I shouldn't have been in the first place. Where is the common sense? There is no common sense in this city anymore. These jury members should be ashamed of themselves. That defense attorney should be ashamed of herself. Do you think if a cop was shooting at a suspect and shot and killed an innocent bystander in a wheelchair, no less, that there wouldn't be charges filed, that cop wouldn't lose his job, that he wouldn't go to jail, that there wouldn't be riots in the streets? But a gang member shooting innocent people, including a small child who had a broken femur as a result, a gang member shooting in self-defense, that's okay. No issue there. When are we going to stop voting for these trash politicians and county elected officials who are not protecting taxpayers, who are not upholding common sense, who are not upholding the law? A homeowner around here could shoot somebody on their property because they felt scared or intimidated and be charged, probably prosecuted. And yet a gang member, it doesn't matter if it's self-defense. This guy shouldn't have been in the situation at the first place. He shouldn't have been confronting this other gang member in the McDonald's at the busiest time of day at one of the busiest places in the city. But there's no consequences for anybody's actions anymore in Seattle and King County, any of these left coast cities. Nobody's responsible. It's somebody else's fault, but we don't know who. But nobody can be charged, nobody can go to jail, nobody should be found guilty. This is without a doubt one of the most stupid things I've ever heard or seen around here. And I can't believe people are standing for this. Pathetic. King County leaders unveiled a $1.25 billion behavioral health plan on Monday aimed at increasing residential treatment beds and bolstering its workforce. The plan would create a network of 5 crisis care centers, provides funds for the recruitment and retention of community behavioral health care workers, and boosts the number of residential treatment beds. It would be paid for with a 9-year property tax levy that must be approved by voters. The levy would cost homeowners of a median value home about $121 in 2024, according to the King County Executive's Office. It would continue through 2032. King County Council is expected to vote on the proposal in February. If approved, the tax levy would appear on the April 2023 ballot. Under the plan, the new regional crisis care centers will offer walk-in access and possible short-term stays to help people stabilize. Short-term? We need some long-term mental health care facilities, not short-term. One center would specifically serve youth. Until these centers can open, the county plans to use the tax revenue to fund mobile or on-site based crisis behavioral services. Since 2018, there's been a dramatic loss of residential treatment beds in King County, dropping from 355 beds to 244 beds in 4 years, according to the county. The plan aims to preserve and restore these beds. Finally, the proposal would create apprenticeship programs and access to higher education, credentialing, training, and equitable wages to support behavioral health care workers. Providers say the county's ability to respond to behavioral health crises in King County is itself in crisis. The behavioral health system in the state has long been underfunded and underappreciated, King County Executive Dow Constantine said in a statement. The pandemic added further stress, and need is increasing even as we lose both treatment beds and qualified workers. There currently isn't a walk-in behavioral health urgent care facility in King County, and there is only one 46-bed behavioral health crisis facility for the entire county. Downtown Emergency Service Center's Crisis Solutions Center, which is the county's only voluntary crisis facility resource, requires a referral due to limited capacity. In July, people waited an average of 44 days for a mental health residential bed, according to the county. Well, the short answer is no. I mean, how many hundreds of millions of dollars is the county wasting on homeless people right now? And let's be honest, the majority of these people that are going to use this are homeless. The majority of people that need to go into mental health facilities are homeless people. And they've got these crisis response people that are supposed to respond when law enforcement calls them to mental health crises. And how many times has law enforcement reported that they call them and nobody shows up? Nobody even comes. That's what this money's going to go for, is, more crappy service from the county. The people in King County are already paying way too many taxes. Now you want to add another $100 the first year. It doesn't go on to say how much it goes, the other years. So I'm assuming that's going to go up. According to their own document, the levy would be assessed at 14.5 cents per $1,000 in assessed value. And they're saying a median priced home is $694,000, so $121 a year. And you may be thinking, oh, this is fine, it's going to be property owners, homeowners that have to carry this burden, pay this price. But if you're renting and the landlord is going to have to pay this extra money, then guess what? Your rent is going to go up too. So in essence, you'll be paying this too. These politicians and government officials are going to have to start learning to use the money they have and use it more wisely. Hundreds of millions of dollars gets wasted on homeless people. The best place you could spend that money on homeless would be in mental health, to get them mentally right again so they can live on their own and take care of themselves. With the economy, inflation, food prices, gas prices the way it is, good luck getting this passed. And if you live in Seattle, the Seattle Parks District has decided to double the amount of tax they collect in their park levy to add rangers and services. When the levy was approved by voters in 2014, the board was given the authority to impose a fee of up to 75 cents for $1,000 of assessed property value. That's nice of them to give themselves the authority to do that. The Parks District Board is mostly made of members of the Seattle City Council. Initially, the levy was 20 cents per $1,000 of assessed value, but that'll go up to nearly 40 cents in 2023. Council members made amendments to even bump it higher than that. My question is, they spend millions and millions of dollars on Seattle city parks for what? So homeless people have places to camp because the rest of us can't use the parks safely. They're littered with garbage, needles, tents, homeless people, crazy people, drug addicted, crazy people. What are we spending this money on? All these taxes for all these services that go to mostly homeless people in this city and county. And continuing with the same theme, this joke of a justice system, criminal justice system in the West Coast proper, continues in Oregon, where they have a shortage of public defenders. Not that I feel sorry for most of these defendants, because they have committed crimes, but until the city provides them or the county provides them with a public defender, the cases cannot go forward, which means there's no justice for victims either. There's over 600 Multnomah County residents charged with a crime who have not been appointed attorneys, despite the Sixth Amendment guarantee that the state of Oregon will provide criminal defense to those who cannot pay for it. Across Oregon, roughly 1,300 defendants are caught up in the public defender shortage, their cases stuck in an indefinite holding pattern. The trouble starts at arraignment, when defendants first hear the charges against them and normally have an attorney appointed to their case if they qualify financially, but if no attorney is available, the case can't proceed, transforming rote hearings into a form of legal purgatory. Multnomah County's unrepresented defendants, most out of custody, make the fruitless trek into two drab downtown courtrooms, sometimes again and again, only to be told to return in a month or 6 weeks. Just makes life a lot harder, said Alex Lewis, 31, who hitched a ride to court with his grandmother and son last Tuesday, only to learn his reckless driving case had been delayed due to the lack of defense attorneys. They should drop it and go chase the criminals, he said of his case. The public defense emergency boils down to one basic problem: not enough attorneys. We're in a crisis, Public Defense Services Commission Chair Per Ramford said during a September 15th meeting. We need to add capacity as quickly as we can. The Commission oversees the Office of Public Defense Services, a statewide agency that oversees and disperses money to the nonprofit public defense firms, groups of private lawyers, and solo attorneys who serve as public defenders. In January 2021, the agency created a new model for paying for indigent cases and for the first time capped the number of cases each attorney could be assigned. The sharp increase in unrepresented defendants caught the attention of state officials that summer, a product of stubbornly high turnover rates, uncompetitive compensation, and the new billing system. The American Bar Association reported this past January that a complete fix would require 1,200 more public defenders, which would add enormous costs to the $350 million system. The Office of Public Defense Services' own projections call for only a small number of new attorneys. Most recently, the state office boosted pay rates for some attorneys with in-custody clients and released $7.5 million for training, supervision, and to hire support staff this summer. But law school grads considering public defense can still expect to earn more as a fresh-faced deputy district attorney or in many other legal roles, said Southwest Oregon Public Defense Services Director Stacy Lowe. What we need to do is increase pay so the disparity is not laughable. Her 9-attorney nonprofit has struggled to fill 3 vacancies, she said, and when new hires are found, they must be supervised by an experienced attorney before taking their own caseloads. While pay rates vary, each full-time defense attorney in Oregon now costs about $200,000 when accounting for salary, support staff, and overhead, according to the American Bar Association. Oregon has the equivalent of 600 full-time court-appointed attorneys who have historically shouldered about 75,000 adult criminal cases a year. Drug decriminalization has lessened the burden somewhat. It's a joke. And maybe this is why they're dropping cases, letting people go, not charging people. They just don't want to spend the money. Oh, they don't care if you're a victim of a crime. They just don't want to spend the money on it. They'd rather spend money on all their other little social pet peeve programs and problems and whatever else line their pockets. This problem is only going to continue to get worse and worse. And also in Oregon, to help combat a growing gun violence problem, the mayor of Portland, Oregon is launching a system proponents say can track the location of gunshots using hidden microphones. Oregon Public Broadcasting reported a panel recommended the city adopt ShotSpotter in a July report. Stephanie Howard, Mayor Ted Wheeler's Director of Community Safety, said Thursday the decision to advance the pilot program with the technology was made after Wheeler met with Police Chief Chuck Lovell. Chief Lovell recommended exploring implementing ShotSpotter on a pilot basis, and the mayor agrees with the recommendation. ShotSpotter says it can identify and locate gunshots in real time using small microphones placed in neighborhoods. Police could then use that data to investigate and deter crime. Critics say the technology is unreliable. A study by the MacArthur Justice Center found that more than 90% of ShotSpotter alerts led police to find no evidence to corroborate gunfire when police arrive at the locations ShotSpotter sent them. Oregon's largest city has been struggling to respond to increased violence on city streets. Police say as of Wednesday, there had been 958 shootings in 2022, with 290 people injured by gunfire. There have been 66 homicides, 57 involving gunfire. Yeah, what good is it going to do? You don't have enough cops on the street, so you maybe know where gunshots are happening. And then what? Extra patrols? It's not going to amount to anything, and it's just another surveillance tactic that's going to be used in low-income neighborhoods. Good old Governor Scum in California has signed a bill to allow illegal immigrants to acquire state IDs. California residents can now acquire a state ID regardless of immigration status under a law signed by Governor Gavin Newsom on Friday. We're a state of refuge, a majority-minority state where 27% of us are immigrants, Newsom said after signing the legislation. That's why I'm proud to announce the signing of today's bills to further support our immigrant community, which makes our state stronger every single day. Yep. More of a third world country every single day. A law passed in 2013 allows California residents to obtain a driver's license, but the bill that was signed Friday will allow non-driving residents to acquire a government-issued ID, even if they are not a legal immigrant. The bill sponsors framed ID cards as passports to economic and societal participation that allow individuals to access banking services, obtain government benefits, and acquire health care, all things that non-citizens should not have. About 22% of California's nearly 11 million immigrants are in the United States illegally. 22%. Almost a quarter of California's population is illegal. according to the Public Policy Institute of California. One day after signing the bill, Scum traveled to Texas, where he should not be allowed, where he targeted Texas Governor Greg Abbott and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for busing and flying migrants to blue cities, and despite California's 2017 ban on official travel to the Lone Star State. The one thing that he did is he broke with precedent. Any precedent of decency and honor is lack of character on display, Scum said at a Texas Tribune festival in Austin about DeSantis. He comes into another state, your state, to try to find pawns in a political game, rounds them up, sends them to an island, and then fundraises off of it. What does that say about his character and the character of the Republican Party that celebrated the act of cruelty and dehumanization? This freaking jackass should educate himself about the federal government flying illegal immigrants all over the country and dropping them off in the middle of the night at airports, where they didn't notify the states that they were bringing them. Plane loads, commercial plane loads full of them. Like I said before, you can go to a non-news site called Police Activity and see the raw body cam footage of police who are called to an airport in the middle of the night that's not supposed to be used in the middle of the night, to an unmarked white airplane with government officials offloading immigrants, illegal immigrants, to buses to be taken to God knows where. The employees on the flight were very, shall we say, vague about what was going on, or maybe they didn't even know what was going on. But the cops never got to the bottom of it. And this is happening all over the country. This is the Biden administration doing this, flying these people and leaving them in various locations around the country. But nobody talks about that. Nope, just the 50 migrants that were taken to one of the richest white neighborhoods in the country and dropped off. And somehow this is dehumanizing. This is a big deal. You know, they're there for 24 hours and the white residents get the military involved and the military deports them to a military base. Does anybody see a problem? Does anybody see a double standard? What a joke. California's governor needs to crawl back under the rock he crawled out of. His own family left the state. His own in-laws left the state and moved to Florida, becoming a registered Republican and a registered independent. What does that tell you? The guy is a dirtbag. And old Governor Newsom's got bigger problems to deal with, even though he's running around getting involved in all these emotional and social problems in other states. An epic heat wave this summer brought California's power grid to the brink of collapse and put its governor on defense as he touted the state's nation-leading climate goals, nation-leading highest taxes to pay for these things. The dude flying around in his private jet and meanwhile telling people they can't run gas-powered lawnmowers and leaf blowers because they're polluting the air. Yeah. In Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom's telling, the state kept the lights on because of its efforts to bolster renewable energy. Went right up to the edge of breaking our grid, but it didn't, Newsom said at a Clinton Global Initiative event this week, describing this month's scorcher to dignitaries gathered in New York City for Climate Week at the UN. This transition worked. The reality, however, is a lot messier. California's recent decisions to postpone the closure of its last nuclear power plant and to extend the life of some natural gas-fired facilities highlight what officials and experts say is the fact that the state with the most ambitious energy goals is far from achieving them. Growing demand for electricity and the fickle nature for now of greener technologies such as wind and solar are making it hard to progress toward the state-mandated goal of a grid that's 100% emissions-free by 2045. Renewables provide 36% of the state's power supply on average so far this year. Those constraints were behind the recent decision by the legislature at Newsom's urging to postpone the retirement of the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant, despite the fact that activists thought they'd secured its closure, and the governor himself once supported the idea. The 10 days of triple-digit temperatures across the state this month sent power demand surging to a record level, bringing state regulators close to ordering rolling blackouts, a potentially deadly move and political disaster. It was the realization of a nightmare scenario, a top state energy official said he's been considering for months. "Oh my Lord, we are in a very bad situation compared to even the worst case that we anticipated," Siva Gunda, vice chair of the California Energy Commission, said he recalls thinking in the spring, when supply chain delays and a tariff on solar imports, how smart, compounded by severe drought, started to look like a multi-year power crisis. The possibility of rolling blackouts became a shadow looming over California Democrats, even those who felt uneasy about keeping Diablo Canyon open. Some talked publicly about how outages contributed to the impeachment of then Governor Gray Davis at the beginning of the century. What's needed now, officials say, is even more investment by the state, akin to the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe after World War II. Enough isn't being done right now to avoid a worrying gap in the power supply in the future, said Senator John Laird, a Democrat from Santa Cruz, who has argued the state needs massive new investment in renewable energy and batteries to move off fossil fuels. "We have to make sure that we have more wind, we have more solar, we really develop offshore wind, we get out of the way of some of the developed renewables so that they come to the grid," Laird said. "The stakes are existential. After the Enron electricity trading scandal and the Western energy crisis that followed 20 years ago, the state's reputation was in tatters and a governor got recalled. But California quickly built itself up as a model for embracing wind and solar panel, becoming the measure against which other states compare their own climate ambitions, like Washington and Oregon. Now, by a state estimate, California will need to deploy renewable energy at 5 times its average pace to meet its mandated goal of 100% emissions-free power by 2045, all that while contending with rising temperatures, drought, and wildfire. The uncomfortable reality gave Laird some sleepless nights, he recalled in an interview. He is close friends with people who fought for decades to shut the nuclear plant, worried there might be an accident along the seismically active Central Coast, among other concerns. He eventually voted to keep Diablo Canyon open, a difficult decision he said was driven by projections that California would not have enough new wind and solar power in time to make up for its closure. No kidding. Maybe have a plan in place before you start closing stuff down? The last-minute scramble by Newsom and the legislature could postpone the plant's demise until 2030, reversing a deal made 6 years ago between green groups, labor, and regulators to close it in 2025. The nuclear plant provides up to 10% of the state's power. Well, it's just like these Democrats to have these big ideas, but there's no plans in place to actually make it work. The electrical grid in all of the West Coast states is not in a position to support their big, stupid ideas that were not thought through beyond shutting coal plants down, shutting gas plants down, shutting nuclear plants down. It sounds good to all the wacky activists, they want the votes from, but the reality is people need electricity to survive. And the green stuff just doesn't get it done right now. And the green stuff won't support all those electric cars that all the West Coast states are going to have. Not to mention there's no charging stations for all those electric cars. I have a feeling in the near future, blackouts and brownouts are just going to be something the West Coast gets to live with. We've put some real idiots in charge out here, and we're going to pay the price for it. Or some people are, anyway. Thank you for listening to the Behind the Line podcast. For more, visit behindthelinepodcast.com. You can also find us on netnewsnetwork.net, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Telegram, Gab, Parler, and Truth Social. Please like, share, and subscribe.